Spoiler warning, I'm going to talk about and show the contents of the anime Mob Psycho 100 all the way through to the end, so if you haven't seen it, you've been warned. Compared to the past, lots of high-quality anime are being produced and aired, which is good or bad depending on what type of anime watcher you are. This doesn't apply to all shows such as Katanagatari and Hunter x Hunter, which I believe, and I've heard that they were ahead of their time. There's many others in the past that have displayed the same level of caliber, but I'd have to say that around 2015 and 2016 was the time we started to see this more. In these years, you have shows like One Punch Man, ReZero, and Konosuba, which up to now still have hype building up for their future installments. These shows have proved again and again why they are so popular and iconic in the anime community. There's other anime like this, and one that I am talking about today that has just ended in the most recent anime season. Mob Psycho 100 is a supernatural action and comedy anime where our main character, Mob, is living out his days while occasionally making use of his psychic powers to defeat evil spirits and forces. With his master, Reigen, he helps take on requests from the public to investigate unusual occurrences that take place in their city. Now, I could make this video about praising the whole series. I mean, the openings and endings are amazing with both the music and visuals. The animation that Studio Bones puts out on a consistent basis is fantastic. The voice actor's performance during the more emotional moments of the show is really convincing and heartwarming. I could make this video about that, but then I think it'd just be boring. Today, I want to talk about the message that the anime left for us. I think there's themes to each of the seasons, and for each of the time periods, the anime wants to achieve its one or maybe multiple objectives. The story presents this in an amazing manner and in great strides. So let's get into it, starting with Season 1. But before I continue, quick announcement. I have a Discord server and it'll be in the description of this video and on my about page, so if you'd like, join the server and hopefully we can build a pretty cool community. Back to the video. I think it's pretty simple. I think of Season 1 as a very long prologue. The show is introducing us to all of its core characters and wants to develop as much as they can of them on a surface level. We don't get to see too in depth into the type of people they are, but that's okay, because it makes up for it with the comedy and action aspect. The action was a huge part of the first season's success. The whole point of the show at this point was to showcase Mob's power. His gimmick of going 100 was really cool. Whenever he went 100, his personality seemed to change. It was a quality of Mob's we need nothing about, but at least we had clues as to what would cause him to go 100. They also had the percentage that would occasionally show throughout the episodes, leading up to the climax of Mob unleashing his full power. It was a linear part of the story that you could look forward to. They removed some of the pauses that would show Mob's percentage in later seasons, but for the beginning of what would become a masterpiece, it was a good narrative to present to reel people in. As far as the surface level details of the characters go, we have Reigen, who is a conman under the guise of a psychic. Dimple is an evil spirit who tags along for the ride, conniving to take control of Mob and become a god. Ritsu is Mob's brother, who is regarded as a very talented, genius boy who Mob wishes he could be more like. We have other characters such as Hanazawa that do experience a change of character throughout the series, but as far as core characters go, these three are Mob's main group. Then we have Mob, our protagonist who is stoic and follows whatever everyone else wants to do. We see this with Reigen a lot, who tends to order him around and call him up and tells him to come over immediately to help with some sort of spirit problem. He goes with the flow, and it's important to remember where he started and where he's going to be towards the end of the series. Mob is also very naive. The prime example of this is when he was younger, he went to Reigen's office to ask for advice about his psychic powers. This was because of the name of Reigen's business that younger Mob believes that he has some sort of relation to the psychic world, when in reality, he didn't before he met Mob. Reigen takes advantage of this and quote-unquote takes Mob under his wing so he can mentor him and Mob can help him with his work. I hated Reigen at first when I watched the anime, but he becomes a very admirable person as the story progresses. These are the main points we need to take note of during the first season. The three things being Mob going 100, surface level character development, and specifically Mob's characteristics that make Mob who we know and love. That's as far as Season 1 goes, so let's move on to Season 2. Season 2 is much more significant in terms of story. If you've gotten used to how Mob is and his antics, then you might want to take a step back and consider that this anime has more of a story to tell than just waging war against an evil organization. It takes Mob, who never tends to think for himself and does what he wants, and gets him to reevaluate who he is and what he wants. Identity is the concept for this season. As a middle schooler, Mob wonders what he truly wants from this quiet life that he's trying to live. He doesn't want to rely on psychic powers for anything and wants to better himself himself so that he can accomplish his goals when it comes to that point. There's trouble in deciding what those goals are, but there's no hurt in preparing for when the chance and luck hits. In my opinion, this stage that Mob is at can occur whenever, whether it's in your youth, like middle school or high school, or adulthood, like anywhere from your mid-20s and upward. And when I say upwards from mid-20s, I truly mean that people in the older age range can still be searching for their ambitions or discovering new ones. I think this is perfectly fine and should be talked about more, but that aside, Mob greets his worry early because of the catalyst of his powers having a heavy influence on who he thinks he is. It didn't start here, but during his early elementary school days, when he met with Reagan, he wanted to learn more about himself, and Reagan helps him with exactly that. Whether it's through mentors or self-exploration, you can discover new qualities about yourself and learn more. But there comes a point where your one method may not work anymore. To keep learning more and more about yourself, you need to get out of your comfort zone. I know that was what I needed to do when I kept running around, getting my hands in everything I could, when in reality, I needed to search for my aspirations and determine which one would last and satisfy me. That's what Mob does when he joins the Body Improvement Club. That's what happens when Mob refuses to come into work in favor of hanging out with his friends at school. Mob is trying to explore every bit of himself, the ones that he can plausibly explore at his age. Being surrounded by tons of influence can definitely help realize things in such a roundabout way, because people's actions and words have an impact on you. Mob isn't the only one who tries to figure out what their identity is. Reagan meets all these new people along with Mob, and it's sort of startling how much his life has changed from his past typical salaryman job. It happens at a much faster rate than Mob's whole process, but it shows that it doesn't matter at what point you are in life, and that it's never too late to redefine what you see as your identity. Another example of an identity crisis happens with Serizawa, who works for an evil organization. He thinks that the organization is doing amazing things because he was picked up by the boss of it and thought he was understood by him, which was later proved to be false. It isn't until Mob says that he'll be Serizawa's friend that he feels confident in defying the bad influence that he allowed to affect him. I think a line in the opening of the second season depicted perfectly what Studio Bones and the original creator, One, was trying to convey with their work. Your life is your own is a phrase that can mean a lot of different things, depending on the circumstances of the person who's interpreting the phrase, but I think at the root of it, it means one thing. Nothing like fate and destiny can determine what you are or where you're going to go. We see this in the episode where Mogami is possessing Asagiri. Mogami shows Mob a timeline where he doesn't have any powers and how it would pan out. It almost seems like Mob is going to break and give in to this fantasy that Mogami has manifested in his mind. But thanks to the influence of his friends, he's able to break free and remember that life is what he wants it to be. He takes away what he enjoys in life, and he is going to continue on with the time he's in now. He goes on to defeat and overpower Mogami in the mental battle and saves the day as he always does. Mob displayed in a very tense situation that he doesn't believe in fate. There is no linear timeline that has already decided which set of clothes you're going to wear on a date, or which turns you're going to take on the way to your local supermarket. There's always a chance for a switch up of any kind. It just has to be you that makes that decision. Your choices dictate what happens in your life. Now, there's tons of different circumstances that may be out of your control, and for Mob, it's the fact that he has his psychic powers. For you, it might be a family matter, where you might have been born, or anything else that we cannot do anything about by ourselves. But you can still make choices that will mitigate or maximize the chances of certain things happening or never occurring at all. I know that I had a strict timeline for myself. I would go to college for some sort of engineering degree, have it paid for by the military, serve in the military, and then get out of there and have some sort of job that I could get with my degree. It was something I had my sights set on, and I thought I was going to live out my life that way. But due to circumstances that popped up, I had to rethink everything, and that brought me to where I am now. I wouldn't trade where I am for anywhere I could have been, because I think I'm at the best moment of my life right now. Mob also opted to live with no regrets, so he pushes on towards a future that he wants to materialize in front of him. Important points to take note of in this season is the fact that Mob believes that he can change his fate. He also believes that his powers are nothing special. We've been able to dissect the significant themes of the story, which now brings us to season 3. I think the third season of Mob Psycho is there to reinforce the essence of what season 2 was about. Mob was faced with a realistic problem where he needs to decide his career path for school, and it causes Mob to explore deeper into the case of his future. It's something to slow down the pace of what happened at the end of season 2, and it doesn't hurt the plot in any sense. The story progresses and Dimple's arc comes about. This might be a tangent from the greater message, but I believe the trope they pulled, the theme of what I needed all along was just a friend, is very cliche, but they did it in a style and with stakes that were different than most anime. The build-up from past seasons also gave a feeling that made it more bittersweet than other stories. They took the safe route of wrapping up the whole Dimple situation, and they communicated it very simply, but it was in a way that made it very unforgettable. The emotions that were building up throughout the whole situation, and then elapsed as the arc ended, were very strong, and made it a significant part of the story. To get back onto track, the next display and continuation of Mob's resolve happens during the UFO arc of the Telepathy Club. I expect a lot of people who are here for the tense parts of Mob Psycho to not really enjoy that part of the story, but let me explain why I find it to be a meaningful part of the story. You have the Telepathy Club, and they're going up to a mountain on New Year's Eve to try to summon a UFO and be able to meet the aliens on board. Now, this sounds very childish and not a very good use of their time, but most of the members of the club use the group to laze around anyways, so I guess that explains that. We have a lot of the cast here on this mountain. They all try their best to summon a UFO using the instructions that they have with them, but it doesn't seem to be working out. But as far as making memories go, they all had fun doing this and find this to be a joyous moment of their youth. They couldn't have asked for a better practical outcome. It doesn't end there though. Mob suggests that they should continue with the rituals and whatnot, saying that they need to try their absolute best to summon a UFO. This shows me that Mob has really grown as a character because he would have gone home with everyone else since they had suggested as such. This new version of Mob recognizes the ambitions of Tome, the club president who truly wants to meet aliens one day, and tries his best to actualize it. With his powers, he believes he can be the key to making this discovery possible. He makes it his goal to bring about this dream and make it a reality. Mob doesn't go with the flow anymore, but takes action in making things happen. This is amazing character development, and goes to show that the lessons we've been faced with haven't been for nothing all this time. There's lasting change, and as far as we know, a significant effect on the mindset of Mob. We see how the third season has continued to reinforce its message, but what about the conclusion to this anime? It can't be something as peaceful as the UFO arc, and that's when the story hits us with a challenge that we haven't been faced with. Do you remember earlier in the video when I said that there are circumstances beyond our control when it comes to what we can change in our lives, depending on the choices we make? Mob is faced with that dilemma, only that he needs to learn from this new life-threatening situation that his powers are okay to have and embrace, rather than wish they were gone. These powers coincide with the emotions he has shut out, and understanding to accept those feelings are a part of controlling his powers. The action sequences during this arc make for an excellent conclusion as the climax of the season and show altogether. The fact that Mob is the final obstacle also means that the people he has met on his self-discovery journey are the ones who need to put in the work and stop him this time. This makes for very sentimental words being spoken from the cast of characters, trying to get Mob back to his usual self. They're using what they've learned from Mob's influence on them, and trying to talk or beat some sense into him. Here, we get to see the full extent of power that Mob can exhibit, but Mob doesn't see this anarchist side of unmoving power as himself. As everyone around him is trying to stop him, he is fighting a battle inside of himself. Trying to convince this savage side of him is taking everything he has in him, and his sense of self is slowly deteriorating as time passes. This is a very stressful, blown out of proportion form of identity crisis we have seen from the show so far, but it resolves it in a perfect way. The person who he thought first understood him at all, Reagan, comes to his side to say some very comforting words. It's a very touching moment that doesn't try to hide the fact that it's pulling at your heartstrings. Reagan tells Mob that it's okay to have another side to yourself. You only have to be willing to accept it as yourself and move on with it. Don't shun or reject that part of you, but try to welcome it into your psyche and spirit. It is going to be a part of you, and because it may have happened because of events out of your control, then it won't be going away. I think the message Mob Psycho continues to put out there and expands upon is amazing at this moment. It's the perfect conclusion to the theme they want to express. It's a part of human nature to want to know who you are and what you are going to do in the future. There's a sense of comfort in knowing what's going to happen, but a sad truth about the world is, we can only prepare for what might happen. You can think about what your ideal self is and where you're trying to head in your self-identity journey, but in this last episode, the anime tackles the issue of accepting who you are now. Learning to love who you are and understanding where you were in the past can make it easier for you to propel yourself towards a better future that you're constantly visualizing for yourself. Mob Psycho is a goldmine for anyone wanting an example example in media about identity crisis. While lots of other shows and mediums perform this theme well, I think Mob Psycho does it perfectly and makes it inclusive for everyone in any age range. It doesn't only have to be people in their youth, but later down the road as well. There's plenty of characters who you might be able to relate to and empathize with. And if people are able to create these characters going through these situations, then that means there must be people in real life examples of this happening, on a much smaller scale though. In fact, everyone goes through an identity crisis, but to varying degrees. It means you're not alone, and it's okay that no matter who you are and where you are, it is fine to want a better version of you, but you must first understand your past and where you are now. I think that's the message Mob Psycho wants people to carry away from the 6 years of production they put into this anime. It isn't glamorous powers or a chaotic life that they want you to envy, but a memory that they want to implant in you to make sure you know that it's okay to worry and that it's okay to be the way you are. That's gonna be it for me. I hope you enjoyed my analysis and that you learned something from this video. I hope everyone has a good day and good luck wherever and whoever you are.